Good afternoon, everyone. We will begin the meeting shortly. Just taking a couple of minutes to make sure that everyone is logged on, and we look forward to the program beginning soon.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I have an echo here.
You know, I see that you're on twice.
Excuse me?
You're coming up 2 times. So I don't know how you would fix that. I think you might want to close one of the windows out if you're hearing an echo.
Did I delete one of those?
If you see, yeah, I think if you see that it's coming, if the meeting's coming up 2 times, I would delete one, but I don't know which one is the one that you're actually visible on right now. I think you're okay. We're just going to give everybody some time to log on.
Perfect. Well, I have 4:34. Should we wait maybe another minute?
Just another minute, yeah, I think, and then we can begin.
Okay. Well, I just want to be mindful of everyone's time.
I think we're set.
Wonderful. Well, I think I'm ready to kick it off. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Rhonda Carson Leach. I am Senior Program Director with the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. I want to welcome each and every one of you here today. Happy Wednesday. Sometimes we say happy hump day because it is Wednesday, it's the middle of the week, and we're looking close to the end of the week. What a great opportunity to come together for an afternoon such as this. So I have to be honest to tell all of you, we have really pondered and thought about having this women-focused type of virtual presentation for some time. We pondered, we thought, we went back and we really tried to figure out exactly what could be the best rollout of an inaugural session. And guess what? Execution is today. We're so excited to be able to present this networking virtual workshop with some amazing women in our area. And I have to say, these wonderful women are members of the IEE. So for those who are not familiar, the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence has really been around 25 years plus, helping small businesses, family-owned businesses to start, to grow, and to prosper. And we do that by having consulting, by having educational programs, by providing networking opportunities, and for members even providing something that we call customized peer forums, where individuals, companies will come together and to discuss really important topics at hand, really best practices, and everyone gets a chance to really dive in, deep dive, to really learn from one another in those peer forums. So we have so much to offer. For those who are not familiar with the IEE, we actually have 5 centers that make up the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence: our Small Business Development Center, our Panther Lab Works, our membership, our Entrepreneur Fellows class, and of course, we cannot leave out our SBDC. And so again, I want to welcome everyone here today. You're in for such a treat, phenomenal speakers. These women have something truly to say. And I think they've answered the call when I asked a question such as, if not me, right? Who? It would be them. And if not now, when, as they deliver. So again, grateful that all of you took time today out of your busy schedule. I hope you have your favorite cocktail or wine or whatever you'd like to have. I'm just gonna have a little water to start off, but that doesn't mean I may not have a little Merlot before the ending of this actual presentation. Just want to also mention to you that we will be sending out a survey for you. We always want to know and gauge how we're doing, if we could do better, or even if there's just some insights, things that you'd like to bring to our attention, we welcome that as well. I'd be remiss if I did not thank our sponsors. Again, we cannot do this without them. Their collaboration, their partnership, and their support of the IEE, which is invaluable. And our sponsors I'd like to publicly thank is AT&T, UPMC Health Plan, Mayr-Gracik Scott, PNC, Insco Long Insurance Group, Cohen and Company, Wilkie and Associates, C-Level, and Net Experts. Those are our sponsors. So thank you so much for supporting this effort for today. As all of you know, none of us do anything in the vacuum by ourselves. We all need help. We all need assistance. We all have teams that really are there to support us. And I'm very fortunate to have a great team in the membership department, and one person in particular who is kind of the right hand. I actually have 2. Tara Garrick, I have to mention her as well too, who's just always there and knows everything about membership. And also my membership manager, Sarah Fullwood. So I want to introduce you to Sarah. She's been with us a little bit over a year and really has a fabulous background in sales and marketing. And she's going to really facilitate this wonderful virtual workshop today. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Fullwood.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. As Rhonda mentioned, this engagement of women's entrepreneurship and leadership is an important milestone for the IEE. We did think about it long and hard, and we've decided to do this launch today. So if you will all join me, if you have your drinks, let's give a toast to everyone who's here in attendance, and let's just enjoy our speakers and the panel today. So we are so honored to have our guest speakers with us. And ladies, I truly appreciate you and your commitment to the IEE. Your support to us means a great deal. Today we have the opportunity to learn from these women and hear from their personal stories of entrepreneurship and leadership. Our panel will discuss how resilience and representation of female entrepreneurship and leadership has impacted their own personal journeys. And our first panelist, I will introduce Michele McGough. And Michele is president and CEO of Solutions for Networks. Michele is an industry leader in the tech and cybersecurity. And I wanted to touch upon what it is to work in a male-dominated industry. And for Michele, that is something she certainly has plenty of experience in. My first question, Michele, is as a female leader in IT, what do you credit as being responsible for your 20 years, over 20 years of success?
Well, hello everybody. First, just a sidebar, wine, Threadbare, local company, and this glass is from a friend of mine that says, friends are therapists you can drink with. So on that note, relationships, relationships are really important, and we all need to support each other. So kudos to all of you that are on this new venture for IEEE today. I hope you meet some new people as part of this, as well as gain some more knowledge. So relationships are really important. Grit, persistence, surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that doesn't mean just the people on your team. That means your accountants, your lawyers, and your mentors. And, in my earlier careers with Fortune 100s and startups, that was a good training ground. And I always, even now, look at every year as another line on the resume, right? So you have to continue to learn, especially in IT. So, and in any field, in anything, you always get it's ups and downs. Things sometimes go great and things sometimes don't go so great. And you have to just be able to get through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff. I hate to lose more than I love to win. It's funny. So when we have projects that we're working on that we really believe that, our clients and us are working well together, and we win them, it's like, well, that should have happened. And when we lose them, it's worse because, wow, you learn from that. It's like, wow. So I say over the years, I hate to lose more than I love to win. So I'd say those are some attributes from a female leader perspective.
That's wonderful. A great point, great point. I think focusing on your strengths and again, having an objective, like not wanting to lose is a wonderful point to make to our guests. For my second question, I would like to know, what from your perspective is critical that a leader get right as it pertains to their relationship with their employees? As you spoke about the relationships that you have, we know that in the relationships that you have with employees is very integral. So in terms of your relationship with the employees and the transparency and development, how would you address that question?
Well, first of all, I'm proudest of the awards we've won in the last several years of one of the best places to work in the region. That means more to me than honestly anything. And I'd say, especially now in the virtual environment, although the first 12 years of the company, we were virtual, but communications and culture, you got to practice what you preach. You have to, especially with the meetings now, I mean, you got to start it at the time you said and end at the time you said, and value people's time. If you have someone that you need to fire, everybody's looking at you to in most cases, they usually earn being let go. And, you know, there's been a few times early on that my team would say to me, and what took you so long? Right? So it's, you know, the culture is, I can't emphasize that enough. And I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, especially in IT, that we've pretty much had virtually no turnover other than what we needed and wanted to have.
Thank you. And my last question for you, Michele, would be, as you look at the tech industry, what do you anticipate changing the fundamentals of IT?
Well, you know, everybody talks about the cloud, right? But it's interesting because while the cloud is certainly going to be going forward a relevant part of anything we do, as well as education, you have to have enough knowledge to ask the right questions, right? And just because you outsource something to a company today does not mean that's the correct solution a year from now. And just because you outsource and put servers somewhere doesn't necessarily mean that's the best solution a year from now. You have to continue to look at what you're doing. We've worked with clients, big clients, where they've outsourced stuff and 18 months later they bring it back in-house because they've found out it's cheaper to bring it back in. And unfortunately, they've let all their people go or move them, so that now they have to rehire, retrain, fill in the blank because they've outsourced everything. So you know, while you need to have a plan, you need to be able to be agile and adapt, and security. So I can't emphasize security enough, especially with the virtual environment. There are people around the world that do nothing but hack all day. And, you know, unfortunately, I even know a few companies that have lost a lot of money because of hackers. So, and again, the network solution today isn't going to be necessarily the network solution 12 months from now, right? So there's shifts in IT spending, there's shifts in partners, there's shifts in companies that, you know, are sort of pivoting to provide different things. So it's hard. It's hard to, you know, it's hard to sort of keep on top of it. So back to, you know, the answer in the beginning about surrounding yourself with great people, you have to have confidence in the people that you've hired or outsourced to have your best interests in mind too. My team hates me when I can't sleep. I'm on the internet going, hey, what about this? Have we thought about this? And they're like, oh no, she couldn't sleep again. Does that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. Do you feel that, you know, your communication with your team, you know, being a female leader is a little bit different? I mean, do you feel that, you know, you can talk to them in a way that is a little bit more earnest, perhaps, or how would you address that?
Well, I think, you know, women in general, I mean, I think we're a lot better at multitasking, and there's lots of jokes that go along with that. But I think, you know, I think just right or wrong, because we're females, we have a tendency to be a little more, you know, taking care, more or less. So, I mean, I remember our first picnic that we had when we were maybe 3 or 4 years, and, you know, we probably had 12, 13 employees, and they all showed up with their families. And I'm sitting there, you know, looking at these 50, 60 people going, oh, wow, you know, I'm responsible for all of these people. I don't think in general males would look at that the same way. You know, same with, we pay 100% benefits, including families, dental, eye care, short and long-term disability. And in general, women-owned businesses pay more on a per employee basis in benefits than male businesses. And there's been lots of studies on that and everything else. So I'd say those are a couple differences just in general, and it certainly applies to our team as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm going to ask everybody this question, but of course it's very relevant. Now facing COVID-19, how have you pivoted, and how do you think this will impact your business?
So I guess, you know, the unknown is scary, right? I think we are in a much better position to work from home than most companies because we had that capability before this hit. So, and we can do a lot of stuff remotely. So we can work probably anywhere in the country remotely, more or less. But what I'm worried about the most is we survived 2008, 2009. That was a very, very, very tough time for our company. And what I'm seeing is things are slowing down, right? Things are slowing down. There's layoffs. There's going to be more layoffs coming. And as that happens, while there's priorities as far as IT and network security, when your profits are down, right, and you don't have as much money to spend, you have to prioritize things in a different way than you did prior to COVID, right? So you have that going from a business and employee perspective. And honestly, the PPP helped a little bit. I would have probably laid 1 or 2 people off for a while, but I didn't because we were very fortunate to get some of the PPP funding. But you know, we had to go in once or twice in the last month to a location, and you worry because if one of our employees gets COVID or wants to take care of one of their loved ones and they get 12 weeks off, for a small company, that's hard to backfill, right? So I think it's affected everybody, you know, especially families with children, you know, with the unknown with school this fall and having to balance work and kids and everything else. And I know my team's, you know, struggling with that themselves. So I don't know how my team does it sometimes, especially a few of them have some special needs children, and that makes it, you know, extra tough. I've been having them, you know, I've been forcing them to take vacation just to have some downtime because, you know, even if it's a stay vacation, right? Just to sort of get away from everything and you know, go for a walk, you know, just go for a walk and get away from everything because, you know, the fear of the unknown and the uncertainty, I think, is what's affecting all of us. And, you know, they call it, you know, they're saying COVID brain, but I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. I think everyone can relate that we're all going through that. And but it's wonderful that, you know, when you look to the leadership, that the leadership is setting an example and encouraging people to take a vacation and, you know, prioritize the things that they need to take care of.
And we have more virtual meetings. We have a team meeting every month. We do training. I have them all buy their families dinner the night we have the training, you know, so that they have a, you know, and some of the kids have said, is it time to get the free dinner from your company yet? So that's sort of cute, right? So, but you know, it's the little things like that, especially now, that count.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that with us. And thank you for sharing with the group. We are going to have questions for our panelists at the end of, you know, each segment, or everyone will be able to address the questions that they have for our panelists after each segment. So I'm going to go to our next panelist, which is Abydee. And Abydee is the president of Butler Gas. And so I'd like to introduce Abbey Butler more to our platform.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. How are you, Abydee?
I'm wonderful. I enjoyed Michelle's comments. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And like Michelle, you are also in a male-dominated industry, and I thought that, you know, perhaps your perspective would be even unique from Michelle's. Whereas Michelle started her business, you were able to now head a family business as it is the third generation. So as a third generation and growing up in your family business, how have you set yourself apart as a leader in a male-dominated industry?
I definitely grew up in our industry. I'm the third generation, as you mentioned, Sarah, and our business has been around for 72 years. We're in the compressed gases and welding supplies market, so it's very heavy industry. And we are heavily involved in lots of trade associations and industry groups where I have been tagging along to these industry conventions since I was born, basically. There are a lot of family-owned and operated businesses in our industry, and it's not uncommon for there to be multiple generations like ours. So growing up in the industry, I was really known as Jack's daughter. That's, you know, my dad and our CEO of Butler Gas. And it wasn't until maybe about 10 years ago that he started being called Abydee's dad. You know, there was kind of this shift of who was the maybe more well-known one. But I think in order to do that in a male-dominated industry, it's really important to just infiltrate and assimilate. You know, I think too often, maybe fellow females in business, we tend to try to automatically find the women's group or automatically find fellow females. And while that's comforting, in a male-dominated industry, that's not really a choice. You just have to get in there and get involved. And I think it's that spirit of volunteerism that has really helped. You know, you gotta give back. You get what you give in this world. And I think getting involved in volunteering in our industry and in our trade associations really helps that assimilation and infiltration process.
That's a wonderful point that you brought up. And especially, I think, like you mentioned, it is comfortable for all of us because women are very engaging and welcoming. So it would be easy to, you know, rely on that support system. But as you mentioned, when you don't have that, you have to take a different approach. So thank you for sharing that perspective. For the second question, I wanted to ask, what are the two critical priorities that you manage directly in your business that supports your family legacy?
Well, I think there are two schools of thought in family business. I think, you know, the business can either exist to support the family or the family can exist to support the business. And I was always raised that we were the latter, that it was my responsibility as the third generation to be a steward of the business for on behalf of our family. So raised in that mindset, we have a very long-term focus. We actually have a 100-year plan as part of our strategic plan. So my sole responsibility in third generation ownership is for the ship not to sink on my watch. You know, I'm one of the 12 percenters. You know, 12% of third generations are supposed to, you know, be successful. That's the success rate in family business for third gen. So my role, my sole focus is to make sure that we survive and succeed through the 100-year plan. And in order to do that, the two critical priorities, number one, internally organizational health. I have to make sure that we have the right people in the right seats on our team set up for success. And then that helps enable us for critical priority number two, which is externally to do the right thing as a business in our marketplace for our customers, and make sure that we are conducting ourselves in a way that we would be proud of, that the fourth generation will be proud to know and to inherit, you know, not leave behind a mess, but leave behind something better than I found it.
That's wonderful. What is something that you feel that you've done recently to make that impact?
Well, you know, we take milestones really seriously. I'm most reminded of a situation yesterday where we had Driver Appreciation Day. Our truck drivers are all CDL Class A, hazmat, and tanker endorsed. It's a very highly credentialed driver's license to be able to transport cylinders, even though what we sell is air. When you put it under pressure, DOT calls it a hazardous material. So our truck drivers, it's a really important, critical role. Our drivers also see our customers more than anyone in the company, any salesperson, any owner, anyone. And especially recently with the COVID and even with the social unrest that's been happening in protests, our truck drivers have had a really difficult time out on the roads and out interfacing with the public. And we won the Compressed Gas Association Fleet Safety Excellence Award for 2019. We had the safest fleet in our industry across our peer category for last year for our total miles driven, and the total accident rate was the lowest of our peers. So we had a party, a socially distanced party yesterday, bright and early before our drivers left. We had truck cupcakes and truck cookies with each of their names on them. And it was just a really fun, simple event as a way to celebrate their excellence and their success because they do a really great job representing our business.
Congratulations on that recognition. You mentioned what's currently going on in terms of, you know, what we're seeing in diversity. So what I'd like to ask you is, what opportunities can you identify playing diversity play in the gas industry and in your family business as well?
Well, I think it starts with recruitment a lot. We tend to, as businesses, want to look for cultural fit, right? You say, oh, well, we just need to find people that fit our culture. But I would challenge us to look for cultural add, that it's not just about fit, but it's about cultural add. I think the worst thing that can happen is get a bunch of people in the room that all think alike. You know, I mean, nothing kills innovation more than like-minded individuals. And so when you have diversity, especially in a small business, the more diversity of experience, of backgrounds, you name it, diversity is going to ignite innovation, because it's in that ideological conflict and debate of ideas that gems appear, you know, that you get a really good, solid strategy when you vetted out all the different perspectives. And you don't get those different perspectives if you look around the room and everyone looks the same, acts the same, has experiences of similarity that make them think the same. You know, that can kill progress.
Absolutely. And that's true for everyone. So it's wonderful when leaders recognize that. So I applaud you for doing so. And the same question that I asked Michelle, I'm going to ask you in terms of COVID-19. How have you had to pivot, and what do you see it impacting in your business moving forward?
Yeah. When you mentioned this to Michelle earlier, I was thinking kind of candidly in preparation for our talk, Sarah, and I sit here realizing I don't think we've pivoted at all. And that's probably a huge blind spot in hindsight. However, we have stayed the course with doing what we do. We've expedited decision-making, that's for sure. In late March, when my memory serves me, you know, all of this kind of hit very local, right, with Pennsylvania taking a shelter-in-place initiative. Because of the nature of our medical gas supply and our industrial gas supply for critical manufacturing, we were deemed as an essential industry at the federal level, as well as a life-sustaining business at the state level. So we had the call to action to stay open, stay operational. But we knew that hard times were ahead because we have a very diverse customer base. And many of our customer segments have not regained full capacity whatsoever. Some have actually unfortunately gone out of business. It's extremely, extremely sad. But we didn't necessarily pivot. You know, we made tough decisions pretty quickly. We got lean pretty quickly. We became very good listeners. You know, any piece of guidance or advice that we received from either the CDC at the national level or from our industry has been very helpful in publishing medical gas safety alerts, in helping us form driver protocol templates. We wrote a risk mitigation for COVID-19 business continuity plan in late March. We still reference that document today. We're still live in the phases of that document. So we just became really good listeners, and we stayed the course and stayed true to our guiding principles as a business, which number one is safety. Above everything else, it's our responsibility to be safe. And then once we're safe, guiding principle 2 is we take care of our people, and happy people make happy customers, which is guiding principle 3. And then guiding principle core value 4 is profitability, because only in that order is there anything left over at the end of the day to invest in the cycle again. So safety, people, customers, profit. We leaned on what we knew, and we tried to play a little offense. You know, we just opened a location in Morgantown, West Virginia. We've been trying to make offensive, you know, maneuvers where we can, but I don't know if we've necessarily pivoted, which is probably a huge lesson I'm going to take to the office with me tomorrow, saying we have to have a blind spot. You know, very smart businesses are changing direction, and we haven't. So I think we're missing something.
Well, thank you for breaking it down that way. I mean, you brought up some really good points, especially how you prioritized, you know, your action plan, and that you reacted very quickly. And also, I think you addressed the importance of a, you know, risk management plan. And I think that's something that every business needs to consider. So thank you for touching upon that as well. And so I'm going to now go and introduce our next speaker. And I have to thank Abydee so much for your information, and again, for giving some practical pointers. It's very helpful to the audience.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was wonderful speaking with you, Abydee. So Karen Mayr is the founder and former president of Sabika. And Karen has a very unique story about immigration and entrepreneurship. In her story, she can tell us some of the challenges that she has faced and the legacy that her company has. And she joins us today with her daughter, Alexandra Mayr-Gracik. So, good afternoon, ladies. How are you?
Good, how are you? We are good, thank you. And hello to you and everybody. And thanks for inviting us to speak.
It's a pleasure to have you.
So,
I wanted to
I'm ready for
start.
the question. Yeah.
Sure. I want to start with our first question. And, you know, as I mentioned, you do have a rather unique story. You started your business out of necessity, and you also, you know, came here as an immigrant. So you can speak to us about that. But with our first question, I'd like to know, you know, often women speak of tapping into their female intuition. And I would like to know how you could provide an example of how listening to your inner voice impacted your leadership in business.
Yeah, it was interesting when I heard Abydee speak in the 5th generation and talking about the crisis right now, that the one thing they changed is that the decision-making has to be faster. So when I started Sabika, it was in a crisis. It was in a personal and in a deep financial crisis for my family. And I basically wrote my mission statement down in 5 minutes. And I knew we couldn't survive. My husband had lost his business, and I knew there was either all or nothing. And so I sat down, talking about intuition. I sat down and had a piece of paper in front of me, and I, for the first time, I think in my adult life, I thought about what had worked in my past and what had not worked. I was successful as a trade forecaster for 15 years or 20 years, but I always did it to bring some money into the family. It was never a passion. It was never for me. There was never, I never really loved it and wholeheartedly. So, and I had left that career a few months before I found out that the other business was not working anymore. And so I sat down and I wrote, I divided a sheet of paper and I wrote down where was I good and where was I not good. And I found out very clearly every time I listened to my heart and I did things that I really believed in that came from me, I had very, very good results. Every time this feeling of inadequacy, usually because even in the fashion industry, I was working as on the level I was working with the CEOs, I was one of the few women. And usually there came a point when after my work was done where I was intimidated and I did not, I pulled back and I did not go through with my visions. So I decided that day, this company, I need a company. And that company needs to be, and I have no credit line, nobody will give me a penny. I need money immediately to support my family and to pay for the mortgage, to send my youngest daughter through school. So I knew I needed not only a company, actually I knew I needed a company, not an employment, because when I wrote when I wrote well and when did not, nobody could ever employ me because it is impossible to keep me at task or to sit at a desk from 9 to 5 in the afternoon. So I knew if I wanted to make it, I had to do it on my own and I had to find people who could do that part of the business, who could help me to get where I needed to go. Because I had, when I hear about a 100-year plan, too, it's pretty intimidating, because I had no plan, only a vision. I knew what I needed to do and what I wanted to do. So I wanted a company by women for women, where women wouldn't only be the worker bees, but they would also be heard and they would be seen and they would be compensated accordingly. And I wanted to grow nationwide. Now, I am not an organized person. I never had a plan, but I have the willingness to work towards one, and I have the openness to bring the people in that are better than I am. So I was never a competitive person. Yeah. So I believed, I was always a person who believed, and I still am. I've lived on 3 continents. I didn't have an easy life. But I still believe that love and kindness and certain principles, human principles, will bring you to what I call success, to a life that is abundant and nice, where I can still, for me, I feel more successful if at night I can still look in the mirror and like that person, because she lived by her principles. And I've always felt that a company should be run after the same principles that you as a person embrace. So I'm a Taurus, so I'm pretty bullheaded that way. And so the main principle for that company was love. Love for our product, love for the principles, love for people. I love people. And I think everybody deserves an opportunity, and I believe, and I have respect for everybody, as long as they behave respectfully. And so I also felt women needed recognition, yeah? I didn't get that recognition that the boys had after we had the success when they sat in their clubs and in their big chairs with the cigars. I wanted women to feel just as recognized. And what I also wanted, because I understood by now, because I was 50 when I started it, and that was 20 years ago. So I also understood that women need flexibility more than anything. So I knew if I could have a company where people have flexibility in setting their goals, flexibility in terms of time that they spend, when they spend it, how they spend it, how much they spend it, then I knew, I was convinced that if you're honest, if you care, if you're kind, if you love what you do, if you cherish the person with the smallest of goals as much as the superstar with a huge goal, we would be successful. And after 20 years, I'm very glad to say that I see that I'm no longer in the company, but they still have my office, so once a month when I peek in and I come in and I hear the laughter and the joy that's there, I know that you can do it. And that is what, for me, makes, for me, it is not really work, yeah. I'm fulfilling, I'm doing good for the people that work there. I'm doing good for the people, well, now you do. That to me, so I was never interested in being the biggest. I was never interested in being the, it always surprises me, like when I get an award or something, but I have very high goals when it comes to integrity and ethics. So I don't know how much that helps. But
it covers a lot of things, and I appreciate that. And clearly you illustrated the point that necessity is the mother of invention. So you spoke to, you were in a position where you had necessity to provide for the family, and as a result, you created this family business, which is wonderful. So thank you for speaking to that. And also thank you for speaking to the matter that you wanted to provide something for women, and that honored, what women's needs were, some flexibility. And so that again is something that I think is really important, and an aspect that many of our attendees can relate to as well. In terms of now that you see yourself, you've built this company, and obviously your hard work and your dedication and the honesty that you approached it with, you've built a company that you've now turned over to your daughter. And I would like to ask you a little bit about, how did you make that decision for the transition? How did you decide your succession planning? And what resources were available to you to make that transition?
That was one of the biggest obstacles that I had to face, or that we had to face. Who is going to be my successor? Because I have 3 daughters. And initially 2 of them, Alexandra and her older sister, worked for me. Now Alexandra and her younger sister are working for Sabika. And Alexandra, I have to, first of all, how did I make the decision? I felt that I was getting very tired. I could not, and I also felt that the role being, it took me very long to understand what it means to own a business, to be the owner. I didn't like that very much, I have to say. I wanted to be I wanted to be with everybody else on the same level. So, it was hard for me to make the distinction between being a wife, because my husband worked with me as well, and a mother, and the CEO, and the owner. That was almost impossible for me to get together for the first 10 years. When I finally had my act together there, and I decided I am really getting tired, and I cannot do anymore for the company what the company needs. We tried a few people from the outside that were sold to us as really wonderful people. And I noticed that it's not so easy to bring people from a different company culture. Culture really was what they had good experiences, but the culture wasn't there, or the culture of honesty, the culture of what I just described. So Alexandra was really the last of my 3 daughters that I was thinking would be my successor. She was always the beautiful dancer, then the designer. She very talented designer, very soft-spoken, and she had to stop dancing early in her life because she had health problems. And but I always say what she learned in classical ballet is discipline. And she after really keeping my eyes open and seeing what does the company need, not what do I need. I could see that her soft-spokenness, her kind heart, her willingness to always learn and better herself was all the right, and also she incorporated the soul of Sabika. And but she didn't have the background, because neither she nor I have a business education. We both have an art background. And so we started with the IEE. We went to the fellowship year together, and so that some bonding took place there. And then after I saw from outside I cannot get the help for the next decade or next 20 years, it happened that we have a family friend who came from a very male industry. He was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company in the chemical industry. And he was also Austrian, so he knew the cultural differences between us and the Americans. That is on top of everything. And he spent 2 years of his life when his family was already back again, and he coached us. First of all, he coached me on how tough I have to be. I cannot be a mother, now a CEO, I have to do this, I have to do that. He introduced corporate structures into our company. And he was a very tough, but also very competent and patient teacher with you. And so before I knew it, it was a 2.5-year process with him. But the whole process from deciding to when it really happened, I would say, was 6 years. So that was the toughest thing, to find the right match. So now I love to not be the CEO. Conrad and I'm now the chairwoman, and we go out. Really, I'm the ambassador for the brand. We go out into the field. Conrad and I drive around or fly around the country, talk to the women in the field. I still try to help hands-on. And I now know that I have a CEO that I can trust personally, and that I can entrust my company to. And even better is that I saw that Alexandra and her sister, the younger daughter, Miriam, who runs the entire sales field or sales department, she was an actress before. I now see how well they work together and how they are shaping the company to what it needs to be right now.
Well, that's wonderful. I can appreciate that, your point that you now appreciate the fact that you don't have to have the burden of making all the decisions, and that you've been able to find the perfect president to run your company, that your daughter embodies the soul of Sabika. That was a beautiful statement. So now I'll ask Alexandra, from your perspective, just a few questions. Your mother has entrusted you with this business, and I wanted to know if who are the people that have encouraged you in this role?
Yeah, definitely. So number one is sitting right here. I could not have a better mentor and role model in everything that I'm doing, not just as a mother. And I think that's where the whole experience with the IEE as well was so beneficial when we started. We finally felt like we weren't just on an island, that being a family business, you know, some of the dynamics that we experienced, it was just so refreshing to see that we're not alone in that. So the different roles of being a daughter, being a mother, being a sister, being a wife, being a chairwoman, being a CEO, you know, it's just constantly kind of switching those hats on and off, even within the business, to the different roles that we play. And it's taken a lot of years to kind of get into those roles. But as I said, you know, I think the biggest encouragement was that faith and trust that I felt in the transition from my mom, especially. I had a wonderful support system around me. I have a very supportive husband. I have a supportive father who, I'm happy to say, you know, again, within a family structure, not everything is going to go smoothly all the time. But I'm very proud to say that we're in a place right now as a family and as a business where we respect each other, we appreciate each other in the different roles that we have. And as my mom mentioned, you know, I was the least likely candidate at first, and I don't take offense to that. Exactly. I'm the middle child. I grew up as an observer of everything. I kind of absorbed things like a sponge. And you know, when you first kind of jump into a new role, which it was for me as CEO, you know, you struggle with things like imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? You know, are they going to realize someday that this was a mistake, or I don't have what it takes? So there's a lot of internal stuff that you go through. I not only had the privilege of having my parents who supported me, my younger sister who supported me and still supports me. We have a fantastic dynamic working relationship. But I also had a coach, actually, that my mom introduced to us. And this was one of the few coaches that we worked with over the years that really was able to work with us individually. So I had a great support there in first kind of walking myself through, is this something I actually want to do? So there's the ask, right? Yeah. Do you want to be CEO? But then going through that process of, is this right for me? So Abydee, I could very much relate to you as well, like within that you know, does the business sustain the family, or the family the business, and just the dynamics within that. So, you know, making the decision not just because it is the family and because I love it so much, but is this really the right decision for me? So I would say the encouragement has come from all those places and has been extremely valued and appreciated.
Well, thank you for that as well. And you've now touched upon the creative gene that clearly runs through your family, and so it's wonderful that you've been able to have that creativity and match it with entrepreneurship and have a family-owned business. Alexandra, I wanted to ask, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Everywhere. So it's interesting. I think, as I said, my mom being honestly the biggest role model in my life, she had a very untraditional path. And growing up, I saw her, we always had that entrepreneurial spirit in our family. You know, when we were younger, we were always coming up with new ideas. My mom was an image consultant, self-created, exactly. You know, so I observed all of that, and I am a firm believer that you just have to start somewhere. It's never a straight path. And I also am a firm believer that every experience that you have in life, if you're open to it, you know, and if you are open to that learning process, you will be able to apply it later on. So as my mom mentioned, I did ballet for many years. That was my first wish and dream and goal, was to become a ballerina. And life, you know, as it does, doesn't always have your plans in mind. So I had some health issues, had to stop that. But that discipline, that experience that I had with ballet has helped me to be the CEO that I am now, for better or for worse. But I hope for better. But also from the design perspective, you know, I had to pivot. So pivoting is something that I think I've become very accustomed to, also being, yes, exactly. I think our family, we're masters of pivoting, not just from country to country, but
Day to day.
Day to day, exactly. But I think that that's something that has helped us to get to a 20-year anniversary, is that creativity that comes with being able to pivot and recognize where you need to make shifts and changes and adapt. You know, one of the phrases that we, actually my younger sister came up with a few years ago, when you must adjust. And that is what we've done. The design process too is constantly adjusting. It's constantly failing. And you fail again and again until you get to the result at the end. So, you know, I'm not afraid of failure in that sense, because I know it's going to take me to that final goal that I'm trying to achieve. But yeah, it's the inspiration for my design, for my work. It's just, I think, staying open, seeing things, not always easy, because that makes me a very sensitive person as well. As my mom mentioned before, you know, I was the quietest of the three candidates she had. Was coached a lot in how to speak in front of people and raise, you know,
Speak louder.
Speak louder, exactly. But also through that quietness, I'm able to take things in, process, and let that be inspiration for what I'm doing, whether it's in design or in leading the company.
And I will address this question to you as well. So in terms of COVID-19, and I know that you have a unique business model, but how has COVID impacted your business, and how, since you're experts at pivoting, how do you expect you will pivot, or how have you pivoted moving forward?
Sure. So first of all, I'm so grateful to be able to continue to employ people during this time. It's honestly something I do not take for granted. I'm very, very grateful as well, and I'm proud to say that we have been able to pivot really well. We took a sales force from being primarily a home party in-person selling experience to pivoting to selling much more virtually and online. That's something that we had been talking about for years, trying to kind of help our field pivot, and we are launching a new system in the fall, a new back office system where all of that was going to be planned. And again, you know, life happens, and when you must adjust. So a lot of that pivoting had to happen sooner than we had planned for, which exactly turned out to be very beneficial, actually, for our business. So, and also a nice way to kind of have some trial runs in certain areas of virtual selling, and being able to apply some of the things we've learned for the future as well.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that perspective. This has certainly been a very dynamic discussion, and I appreciate all of the women, our panelists who were speaking today, and bringing in their stories and their experiences. I think at this moment we want to engage, you know, the attendees, and anyone who has questions. We encourage you to address the panelists with your questions. I think that that's something we can engage further with.
I just want to say I am so inspired by all of the panelists. I really enjoyed listening to you and your stories, and wrote lots of notes. So thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Right back at you.
Thank you.
There were a lot of really good takeaways, and I think being able to recognize, when other people have strengths around you was one of them. Being able to react quickly is another. And, you know, not being afraid, being able to pivot. So those were some things that stood out to me. So I thank you ladies for bringing that to our group and for sharing those experiences. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? You can certainly insert them in the panel.
Hi there, this is Jill Yonit, and I know a few of you. Hi, Abydee. I had a question that I had put into the chat area. So I lead a consulting firm, the office here in Pittsburgh. We have about 120 people. We all went virtual. And we actually have about 5,000 consultants, mainly in the US, but also around the world. And one of the things that we've been really working on, and we hear a lot from our clients, is, you know, during this time when we thought this was going to be more temporary, and clearly this is not, right? Especially for those of us who transitioned to working from home. What kind of things are you doing to keep your culture strong? Clearly at Sabika, you guys probably had this a little bit more in tune as you had people that were out doing, you know, more meetings outside of a true office environment. But Michele and Abydee, I mean, as your office environments kind of went virtual, and now as you potentially bring on new people, how do you bring them into your culture, and what sort of things are you doing to strengthen that if possible?
Michele, did you want to lead us off?
Michele, I think is still on mute.
Hear me now?
Now we can.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So we just hired someone 2 weeks ago and brought them on. We have them in all the virtual meetings. In fact, before they were officially hired, they were included in our team meeting. I haven't met the person in person yet that joined the team, but the interview process was 5 or 6 members of our team on WebEx. And, you know, we vetted the person really well. And, you know, they've sort of moved into it. They talked to a lot of our people beforehand, so they knew what type of environment it was and what they were getting into. And pretty much everything, you know, as far as getting their laptops and all that stuff was done, you know, with someone taking it to their homes. And you know, you sort of figure it out. But you know, like I said earlier, you start early with the culture. This is who we are. This is how we work. You know, either you're going to like it or not. And you know, it's going to be virtual. Although we do have office space, and people can go into the office space if they choose to. And a few that have children just because they can. But it's you know, it's worked out okay, but it is hard. It is absolutely harder. It's absolutely harder.
I think for us, kind of the internal staff, we went through this kind of initial transition, and then it was like this honeymoon phase, like, this is awesome. I can go take care of, you know, throw in a load of laundry and then jump back into things. But what I did notice kind of after that honeymoon phase was over, that connection, that having those little conversations in between, you know, for me, most of the day was always walking around. I was hardly ever sitting in my office. So checking in with people. We use Slack to stay in touch, which has been awesome for us. And one of the things we did a few times as well is scheduled at the end of the day, like a little video, so not through Zoom, but just on Slack, where we asked, pets, family members to kind of get introduced because they were showing up in the background anyway, unexpectedly at times. So I thought that would be a kind of a nice way to kind of invite each other into, each other's homes and kind of get a little bit more, stay more connected. And I think especially for us being a family culture company, that really helped.
Yeah, some of the things, Jill, that we have done to keep the culture strong. I can remember in the height of lockdown, which was probably late April, we sent food gift baskets to every associate's home for their families. Actually, special thanks to IEE for the introduction, because we worked with Zingerman's for those baskets, and they did a wonderful job. And so that was just gestures of appreciation. We're pretty fortunate, even though I never looked at it that way, in the sense that our office space is very traditional. We have a very old building with enclosed offices. So we never went modern to that open work, open flow plan. And thankfully, because of that, we were able to get back on campus much sooner, which obviously I think helped the culture because there were no haves and have-nots, no matter which way you looked at it. Grass is always greener on the either side of people who telework, want to be at work, people who want to be at work, want to telework. So that turf war stopped the minute we all got back on campus. And thankfully, just because of our building layout, we were able to do it safely.
Do you have any additional questions for anyone?
Hi, this is Debbie Kreis, and I was just interested in getting your feedback on any specific daily habits you have as business leaders, whether it's reading a certain author that you like, or certain exercise habits, or anything related to daily tasks that get you set in the mind to do things differently now, maybe with the COVID, than maybe how you did it 5-6 months ago.
I have something on the top of my head for that, Debbie, if ladies, if you don't mind if I kick us off, but I am a huge fan of books on tape, like audio books. I always have a wish list of mainly business books that I want to read that are recommended or that I hear about. I have a soon-to-be 3-year-old at home, so reading adult literature in any aspect is not something we're doing. I read a lot of board books, but that's about it. So having that commute time and that time in my car to listen to really smart business authors, I find helps kind of pump me up or, wind me down and debrief after the day. Jocko Willink is who's on my playlist right now. Lots of really good stuff about leadership.
I do a sanity walk, either in the morning and at night, just sort of as a way to sort of, think about things. Sometimes I'll do a conference call while I'm walking, and other people in the neighborhood will look at me like I'm a wacko. And then, at night. So I sort of almost wind up and wind down.
That's awesome. I just recently started doing a journaling app, which I've found very helpful. And breathing, just remembering to breathe, I think is really important. But I definitely need to improve in that area for myself in general to take care of myself first so I can take care of others.
I lost my commuting time, so I missed the audiobooks for sure. And I have checked them out from my local library on my phone app, and they go back on the shelf before I have a chance to listen to them because I was used to commuting an hour a day each way. So now I need to walk an hour a day to get that in. So great, so much.
That sounds like it would have dual benefits.
Right,
so that's
right.
Smart.
I think you're right. It's the discipline, right?
We have a question from one of our attendees, and I think she may have gotten disconnected, but I'm going to ask it on her behalf. And it was for you, Michelle. She wanted to know, how did you get started? How easy or hard was it for you during your first year?
Well, I was in IT sales before I started the company, and I left AT&T and went to work for a startup, and the startup was great. Got sold to a company that had an awful executive management team. In fact, the CEO ended up a year or two after I left going to jail for stock manipulation. Yeah, really. So I started it with $20,000. The first year was tough. I worked for a company, cash flow's king, right? To get cash flow. So Monday I'd head down to Columbia, Maryland, and Thursday I'd head back. So I was doing some consulting and sales development for a company that I knew the CEO from, but that was helping me be able to hire other people. I had no debt. I have no debt, and that's how it was brought up, which is, you could say it's good, bad, or indifferent, right? And the first year, in addition to the fact of I had a non-compete with the company I worked for, and they came after me, even though integrity is very important to me, and I honored it. But my lawyer said, you can, either say you won or, just honor it. You can still win because it wasn't a good non-compete, but it didn't matter, right? So I waited a year to go to get some of the clients I wanted. But that first year, I got everything from, it's not really a woman-owned business, it's a shell company. My competitors said, I was bankrupt in the first 6 months, that, people that I had hired were leaving, that my customers hated the work. So the long-winded point is, it was difficult, but we made it through. And sometimes, unfortunately, even now, I get that, we're going bankrupt, and it's sad. But, we're survivors and we get through it, right?
Well, one of the questions I also had is, how do you women inspire change in your businesses?
Abydee, I loved what you said about culture and, not seeing it from the perspective of, necessarily culture fit, who completely emulates what your culture currently is, but having some of those, I guess, almost like sparks or rubbing points that allow you to grow and develop your culture even more. I know for us, we definitely have had those sparks in the past, and looking back, reflecting on that, I think sometimes the tendency, especially for me as a middle child, is to kind of want that peace and a sense of comfort and stability and balance. But it's really in the imbalance that, exciting things can happen and progress can happen. And I thought that was a really, really interesting point.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that, we always say we're trying to find folks who fit, and that's true. There is merit to that. It's just, I don't think we can limit ourselves to only that fit, but by trying to find cultural add, new ideas, new skill sets. If we like to promote from within, that's, back to the question too of how we kind of manage and promote change. We run really horizontally, we run really flat. So we want, we have that entrepreneurial culture where each associate is empowered to make his or her own decisions. We actually use a 3-question test. Is it safe? Is it good for the customer? Is it good for the company? And if you can get a yes to all 3 of those questions, it's a good decision. You just do it. It doesn't matter what it is. So every associate, you know, regardless of tenure or position, is kind of empowered with that decision making. So we like to promote from within. However, when we do go out and hire from the outside, that's when we really need to make sure we get it right. That it's that cultural add in addition to fit.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as far as, you know, change and looking at 12, 16, 18 months from now, we do every 6-week strategic sort of like brainstorming sessions. And that's helped us pivot in the past.
Michelle, I actually had a question for you. I typed it into our chat, but Brett encouraged that I just ask you directly. Earlier in your comments when you were talking about hackers, I was curious if you could imagine a situation where you were the keynote speaker at, say, a convention of hackers. Yeah. What would your speech be? What would you tell them? What would your message be? I don't know if there are hacker conventions, but if there were.
There are. Yeah, the black hats. Yeah. So first of all, I wouldn't want to be this keynote, but beside that, I think it'd be like an ethical discussion, right? You know, good versus bad, because it's interesting. A lot of there's a decent amount of hackers that have gone to jail and come out, and now the Fortune 500 companies have hired them, right, as consultants to sort of, you know, make sure that the bad guys can't get in, right? And I mean, these people they're brilliant, right? They're brilliant. So, but there's, you know, there's a difference between the good versus bad, and and it's a dilemma, right? Because you can change on a dime, right? So yeah, so I'd probably pose it as an ethical discussion.
Do you have any other questions for the panel?
While you're looking for questions, I was just to follow up on the change question. I think change is inevitable, but I think what's really important too is how you manage that change through trainings for us specifically too, but internally as well. I think that's something that over the years, that change management is even more important, I think, than the change itself.
Alexandra, I have a question for you, and I apologize if this is personal. That's my disclaimer. You're welcome to not answer.
We're a very open family.
How is your relationship with your siblings? How has that dynamic changed now that you are the heir apparent in your CEO role?
Great question. Challenging, to sum it up. So with my older sister, unfortunately, there was a bit of a break within the family. There's definitely that's a very painful point in all of this.
But that was before you became.
It started before I became CEO, but definitely didn't help that once I did. And that's a relationship that I hope at some point can be mended, but if not, you know, unfortunately, that's how life goes sometimes. With my younger sister, it's we're in a really great place. Again, I think change management in that, you know, taking on a new role, it's so much about communication. So it was very important for me to not just assume that she accepted me as her CEO, but really communicated a lot with her, but always kind of, I think what's important in a family business dynamic is differentiating and kind of being very clear about which hat do you have on at what time. And am I having a conversation with you right now as a sister, or am I having a conversation with you as your CEO? And sometimes it's also inevitable that those two blend together, but I'm a huge, even though I was the most quiet one, I'm a huge proponent of communication. So, and transparency, exactly. And also allowing space for honesty in that too, of how you're feeling, and let's talk about that and kind of come to hopefully a common place. But yeah, it hasn't been easy. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your candor.
Cool.
So it's Jill again. I had another question I asked that I could ask. Something that I've been doing a lot of thinking about is, you know, as we were all forced to go and work from home, and also forced to change our lives significantly, there's been some articles that I've read on, you know, many of us going through a grieving process of grieving for the life that we used to have that we no longer have, and it wasn't by our choice. And so I feel like possibly women CEOs are much more empathetic to that or aware of that with their employee population. And I was just wondering if any of you have addressed that or thought of that in that way, because even within the grieving process, I feel like there's steps that we can all go through to try and make our life as best as we can in the constraints that we have. And I didn't know if anybody had thought about that or given any, you know, how you're being empathetic with your employees in these type of situations.
Michelle, you kind of touched on that when you were speaking, and that resonated very much with me. I think mental health is so important enough. You know, it's something that's very close to my family as well. Anxiety. I have a daughter who is 12 and suffered through school refusal and is still battling that. Now there's totally new uncertainty. So I think that has given me more empathy for our staff. And that's something that I kind of remind leadership at times too, like we're all going through a really challenging time. And I think finding moments of positive recognition, empathy through just understanding and being maybe a little bit more understanding if somebody has a moment. So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the personal professional side, I have heavily leaned on, you know, speaking of IEE, our peer forum. I've been active in a peer forum for about 10 years now, and we're really close. You know, our group is tight, and we've had weekly calls at some points. We have a group text message thread, and then of course our regular meeting cadence. So that network has been extremely supportive just on the personal professional side in dealing with, you know, how the heck do you run a business right now when you have no answers, right? When you barely have the questions to ask, let alone the answers to give. And so that network has been helpful. And then with our associates, we've tried to stay busy. And, you know, Jill, I've never thought about it in the grief way that you just shared. And I thank you for sharing that, because that definitely brings a little bit of a light bulb moment for me, because when I'm down, I tend to just be busy and get busy, and just almost like a distraction coping mechanism. And I think that's what we've done as a company. You know, we've just tried to take on, we're doing an ERP conversion right now. Why? Because we have a lot of computer facing time right now. Like, why not? Let's just stay busy. So it's, yeah, I never thought about it that way, but I think that's how we're coping.
Yeah, I think that being busy, I'm busy now, is a very dangerous approach. I could tell my husband and I were kind of trapped in Europe for a few months when the virus broke out. And I talked to Alexandra and Miriam on the phone regularly, and it was always very, they were always busy, and it was always very matter-of-factly, but I could feel the tiredness that they tried to overplay or play over. And I think the result of always going over it was out taking that courage to go a step back and saying, I need a break now, and I deserve a break. And the others that have worked with me for so long, they can handle a week without us, or 2 weeks. I think that is absolutely necessary. I think it's a huge danger I used to always be so impressed with people that were working so much more and so much harder than I was. And then I looked at the results, and I have to say I'm here, and then I'm here, and then I'm here again. So, but when I was ready to do what I had to do, I gave it 100%, and I had the 100%. Whereas those constant busy people, the results weren't quite that impressive. And so it's something to think about, I think.
Thank you.
I'll have to work on that one.
Me too. Thank you, Karen.
Like a mother talking here. Yeah.
Wise words, very wise.
Have you ladies found that, you know, during this shutdown that you've made more time to reprioritize of your business needs, and in addition to that, you know, your personal needs? I mean, have you seen that you can provide yourselves or your teams more of a balance? Or would productivity be too affected by that?
I'd like to say yes, but not for myself. I think that's a challenge as a leader, like being so focused on, you know, Abydee, I can totally relate to. It's like, this can't fail on my watch, you know, or like just feeling that enormous sense of responsibility for our employees and our independent consultants, that like I said, I think in that honeymoon phase for us, being at home, seeing my kids more, which now I have, you know, also a son who's going to be a senior. My daughter's going into 7th grade. They're like hermits, so I don't now really see them. They're locked up in their rooms and playing video games. But there was definitely, there have been moments of like, oh, it's just nice to go for a walk. You know, I think especially in quarantine, it was like you kind of were reassessing things, or I was reassessing things. I enjoyed those walks with the kids to force ourselves to get out of the house. And I have to say now that, you know, things are kind of in this in-between state, it's become a lot more challenging for me to find that balance.
I can definitely relate to the taking pleasure in the little things now. We moved to a new home, a new neighborhood, about a year ago. And we have met more neighbors in the past 60 days than anything, because everyone's doing exactly that, out walking with their families on the streets. And there's kind of this wonderful sense of community, and people are friendly and eager to exchange niceties across the street. So that's very nice. And I previously, pre-COVID, had been doing a lot of business travel. I'm president this year of our industry's National Trade Association, and I'm on a few boards that demand a lot of travel. So it was not uncommon for me to do like 2 trips a month, short, business trips. And I really missed the lack of travel at first, but now it's been wonderful to fill that time with just the simple pleasures of family life. And what are you doing this weekend? Absolutely nothing. And really looking forward to it. So I can relate to that. I think that's been a nice silver lining.
Ladies, this is Rhonda. It is now 6:06, and you've just warmed my heart. Let me just tell you how outstanding this was. I am just in awe. I really am. And you were some phenomenal women. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication, your support to the IEE. Thank you for sharing your insights, for really sharing all those honesty things, the really true, down deep soul pieces that you shared with us, and really just your overall expertise. We want to have more of these. I think this was phenomenal for our first inaugural, and I'm hoping that our surveys will actually result in that. And if they do not, we're going to do it anyway, because this was fabulous. And I know that all of you really enjoyed this session. You've inspired me. And so I know all of you, and there's just a little piece of me that feels a little bit higher right now, having listened to all of you and what you shared for all of us. And so as an inspiring woman, it's simply to create something that's phenomenal. It's someone who can fill someone with the desire to urge them to do something worthwhile, something that creates a better world. That's what each and every one of you are doing. Well, perhaps you inspired women will help to live life free from definitions, from constraints, from attachments to the generally accepted ideals and stereotypes of beauty and success. That is you inspirational women. Again, I thank all of you. For those who are new to the IEE and would like more information, you can contact myself, you can contact Sarah Fullwood, you can contact Tara Garrick. We are ready to answer your questions and to assist you with anything you have regarding IEE. For those who are members, thank you again for your support. We are here for you, and I just will leave this for you. That if it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. And if not you, who? And if not now, when? I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, and we will see you again. Take care. And oh, by the way, cheers to all of you.
Cheers with our butternut.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Thank you.